At least one cybersecurity expert is warning that even though recent spates of cyber attacks are targeted at Russia, they could affect other countries as well, and including South Africa. Let's get more on this. We're joined by Professor Bruce Watson, Stellenbosch University's Head of Information Security. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us this afternoon. I think it's pretty self-explanatory when you see the images of one country invading another country and the consequences of that. But when we talk about cyber warfare, what does that look like? What does that even mean?
Well, there are a couple of different variations in this. I mean, one of them is a very surgical kind of warfare in which one country is going after the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure of another country. But the one that we need to be maybe a little bit more scared of in South Africa is the notion that people are using large-scale cyber weapons that are very indiscriminate and perhaps take down infrastructure and servers and businesses within South Africa.
What is it that we then need to do? You hear a lot of, companies talking about hackathons to make sure that, they are hack-proof, if you will, if there's such a term. Are we prepared to protect ourselves where that is concerned?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's safe to say that no country is very well prepared, some better than others. Here in South Africa, certainly we have certain sectors of government, but also some business sectors that are very well prepared indeed. And I'm thinking about the banking sector, for example. They have top-notch people that are working day and night to secure these systems. But for the rest, a lot of companies and, of course, individuals like myself, need to pay more attention day to day, given what's going on in the world, and really protect ourselves as much as possible.
Well, this is quite interesting because we would be made to believe that Russia is always the aggressor, and they are maybe not the aggressor, but they're always on the offensive where this issue is concerned with cybersecurity, and here they are facing a threat. Does this then dispel that notion that no one can touch Russia when it comes to hacking?
So certainly it does. I mean, that is actually one takeaway from this. The other takeaway from this is that cyberspace is very much the Wild West. So things are very indiscriminate in the sense that people who put out a cyber weapon or some sort of virus, for example, these things are very indiscriminate in the sense that they're not specifically going after one country that can actually start to affect us in South Africa. And even though we're not at all engaged in the actual hot or kinetic conflict, we can actually be touched by the cyber war. And this means that there are really no strict sides. This flows very, very easily across borders and to our detriment as well.
Why would we even be a target?
So there are two answers to that. I mean, one of them is we can be a target of indiscriminate cyber weapons. So I call them digital weapons of mass destruction. So people who put viruses out there, various kinds of indiscriminate phishing attacks and ransomware. And in that sense, if it's between two other countries, perhaps in the northern hemisphere as we see right now, those kinds of things can overflow into any other country simply because we're all digitally so interconnected. The other side of the coin is the more targeted cyber attacks. It's very possible that one of the hacktivist groups gets it in their heads that because South Africa has been walking a kind of middle line in terms of the politics of this conflict, people could lump us in, for example, with the Russian side and carry out hacktivist and other forms of attacks on South Africans and South African businesses.
There's a cartoon character as you speak that comes to mind, the one that takes from the haves to give to the have-nots, and I guess in the issue of morality, if you will, for lack of a better word, it would appear that's what these hackathons are doing. What do we know about this group, Anonymous?
Right. I mean, so the first thing to say is that these groups are very, very loose-knit. Anonymous is a perfect example of this very amorphous group. It's a collection of people that get together. Some people leave the group, of course. New ones join. It's very poorly defined, except for the belief that they're actually doing the right thing. And even within the group, it's not always clear that there's, a singular direction. So they can actually be torn in a couple of different directions. Nonetheless, there is a little bit of Robin Hood thinking behind some of these groups. Anonymous being one of them, and they do tend to go after, the large organizations, the ones that they feel actually need to be taught a lesson, certainly digitally, in some form of morality. And beyond that, there's actually essentially nothing that's known other than that they're drawing people from around the world, all kinds of age groups, and extremely difficult to track down. Identifying individual members is next to impossible.
And the overarching message, or the overarching question maybe that I have, is that who regulates, cyberspace? They can be Robin Hood today, they could be a villain, tomorrow. It's a very thin line of doing the right thing.
Indeed, indeed. And actually this will always be a problem in cyberspace because it's so difficult to police and to track down. So the ability for cyber criminals to blend in with hacktivists and to cross borders and to be operating from one physical country but using servers and computers in a different country means that identifying the jurisdiction, who actually should be tracking down and which police force should be actioning that is something that's also next to impossible. So we do have strong laws in most countries, including South Africa coming in with various laws relating to this. But nonetheless, people will simply move across digital borders and remain somewhat hidden from the countries then that actually do have the police force to track this down. So in that sense, the best way to insulate ourselves as individuals but also as companies is then by good cyber hygiene, if you will, always making backups, managing your own security and being aware of the potential risks.
Good cyber hygiene. I wonder, if you were to look into your crystal ball, whether Vladimir Putin is tickled by any of these cyber, warfares against his country.
Yeah, I think perhaps initially he was. I think I certainly can't speak for any nation state, but one thing is very clear. And that is, although Russia and a number of other large countries have very, very competent cyber forces, once you have a large organization like Anonymous or any of the other related types of organizations against you or out to get you, it becomes asymmetrical warfare very quickly, and it's fair to say that the number of hacktivists within Anonymous certainly is much, much larger than the cyber defense force of Russia. So I think the initial, let's say, excitement about what had been unleashed here has probably diminished somewhat in Russia and of course any other country that lands on the receiving end of this.
Perhaps a conversation for another day, going into warfare with people that you cannot see, with people that you can't even track down. Very difficult. Thank you very much for helping us make sense of that. Bruce Watson is Stellenbosch University's Head of Information Security.